Pathfinder's time will return. Coming into season 24, we might see a shift. Yeah, Newcastle's a little overtuned, absolutely. We should change. We have to change in order to stay fresh.
Tom here from EsportsGG. I am at the Apex Legends Global Series Championships in Japan. I'm with John Larson. And we're going to ask your questions. Our friends over at the Competitive Apex subreddit have sent in their questions. We've picked out a few, and we're going to get answers for you direct from the word of the developers. So we're starting with a really nice light one. Why do you hate Pathfinder so much?
Oh man, yeah, that's a sensitive subject. Pathfinder has been on a journey throughout Apex's lifetime. The Pathfinder nerf, namely the death of the grapple with the grapple cooldown, was an admittedly heavy-handed attempt to shake up pick rates a bit. I'm not going to sugarcoat it or hide it. If you guys haven't caught on right now, there's been a very obvious shift or effort to sort of push a support meta. There are certain characters throughout Apex's lifetime that have stayed at the top. That doesn't mean that just means we need to nerf them down all the time. But in order for support to shine and really test kind of the waters here, Pathfinder was unfortunately caught in the crossfire. I would say, as a reason Pathfinder is a top pick legend. He's fun to play. He works so well in Apex. And so I will say, that's not here for good, right? Pathfinder's time will return.
Is it a goal among the dev team to make complex kits for the characters? They say that maybe Apex kits are a little bit sort of simpler than other games like Overwatch or Valorant. What would you think about that?
Is there a goal to make them more complex?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I think over time, as the game progresses, we've had to create more ownable design space. I think sometimes you do have to create more complex kits by virtue of that. Like Newcastle, I think, is a more complicated sort of Gibby in the sense they both play shields, but Newcastle can change the direction of his tack, revive while moving. You've got this wall that has this jumping thing. So I think maybe some of the newer characters are just naturally a little more complex. But at the same time, we are a gun game. Our gunplay is so strong. We're a first-person shooter, and we want weapons to really shine. And so when a legend kit can be more approachable for maybe a new player, we like to have diversity. If you come in day one and you're confused, try out Bloodhound, get a sense of where people are positioning. It's a really straightforward. You press tag, you get a scan. And then if you're looking for more complexity, you can find that in something like a Newcastle or a Crypto. But we never kind of go in looking to make something necessarily more complex. We just start looking to kind of find the fun and find ownable design space.
Another one. Why do you hate Octane, sad face?
Octane's funny. I would ask, for players to guess lifetime in the game where Octane's pick rate is. He's consistently top 3, top 2. And you or me, someone who plays Apex a lot, especially on the comp subreddit, Octane is garbage. He's not very good, but he is fun. And a lot of people gravitate to I could go fast when I press my button. Sweet, that's fun. But no, we don't hate Octane. That's a challenge of mine where I'm thinking, how can we get Octane elevated, get more high level play? There was a brief window for a week during Revtane meta and Gibby meta where there was Octane's jump padding into bubbles, and I would love to channel back into that and see what we can do there. But it's a bit of a balancing act. We have to add some skill expression and depth to that kit without swaying too far from I'm Octane, I press my button, I go fast, because the simplicity of his kit I think is what makes him approachable and what keeps his pick rate high. But yeah, for comp he's not. You're throwing if you're picking Octane.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. Someone asked, why haven't you implemented favorite legends yet?
Good question. I think we did sort of add some logic behind if you're AFK and you're not there for Legend Select, it'll default to your top pick legends that are available, so it'll kind of do that automatically. I don't know exactly why that hasn't happened earlier, why we haven't implemented a front-end button for it, but I do think there is something to be said about, even in this sort of heavy-handed support meta, people are pretty sticky. There's some players that are pretty sticky to their main, and I think you can have a surprising amount of fun and sort of discovery and a sort of freshness to playing a new character and kind of getting reps with different kits. So it's not something we have implemented yet, but I'm sure it's on a list of quality of life stuff that we'll evaluate.
That was very diplomatic. My answer would have been, don't go AFK during Legend Select. You've got to stay locked in, right?
Yeah, stay locked in.
Someone asked also, why did Apex stop being a guns first game, and do you think it's now abilities first?
It's a fair question, especially kind of as we evolve as a game and we're looking to push things like support meta and whatnot. I don't know, it's a complicated question. I mean, we talk about this balance all the time in terms of how much guns are at the forefront, or even depending on what legends are in the meta, like if it's assault heavy and there's a lot of damage dealing, like area of effect abilities versus more sort of support or like passive oriented. Like there's so many variables. I think like we're cognizant of what our legends are and like what they provide for gameplay and wanting to celebrate that. But at its core, like if you're not proficient at some level with guns, you will hit a cap, in our game. And so I still do believe that is the core. I think, I'm not going to put a percentage on that, but it's something that changes season over season, something we're thinking about. And I think coming into season 24, we might see a shift, back in the other direction with some of the weapon changes we have coming.
Something to watch this space with then. Someone has asked, do you feel that you can change the current trajectory of the game to bring old players back and attract new players? Maybe from your point of view, more about sort of legend design.
Yeah, I think this sort of season 23 support meta is an attempt at that of people that may be used to playing a support role in other games, they can come into Apex and maybe not immediately, it's hard for them to immediately find success. Like, I want to support my team, but maybe I'm not as proficient with a gun. Like, how can I find success? And so I think when we take heavier meta swings and sort of reset the skill floor in a way, that is a way to be somewhat of like a great equalizer to kind of get everyone back to square one and kind of learning how to navigate a new balance, a new meta. So I think that's something we're going to continue to explore. But yeah, I think just like big meta swings and being maybe less conservative about that, knowing that we're a live game and we can be shifting these things, I think is something we're going to be looking into. Yeah.
Okay, another question is on Newcastle. They say, when Newcastle is so OP and you guys decided to buff him even more, where do you get that from? Is it from data?
Yeah, Newcastle's funny because on one side you have Octane, who is this popular legend that's not very good. And then Newcastle for the longest time was since his inception was the opposite, where he's always bottom of the barrel pick rate, and we kind of were drip feeding him buffs. And a lot of players say, wow, like Newcastle's good. You'd have some moment where you're like, oh my God, I couldn't have done that on anyone else. And so with the support season, it's like, okay, you give him everything, get that pick rate up, and like see his kit shine. And now at this point, it's like, okay, we can evaluate. We've gotten a lot of reps personally, just as a player, and then watching streams, getting feedback, looking at the data. Like we can make more guided decisions around that. But Newcastle's a little overtuned, absolutely, and we'll get him in line, sure. But seeing a meta on the main stage now, like that we haven't seen before, like we like that. We like those moments, even if it means a legend is OP.
Okay, our next question is actually a great follow-up. They say, a question on my mind lately has been, do you think the balance team sometimes focuses too heavily on pick rate when factoring in character-related buffs or nerfs?
Yeah, I think even like designer to designer, you'll get different opinions on how many people, like on how people are looking at different charts or different metrics. But it's something we discuss every day, and I don't think we are honed in on the numbers. I think the data is good to help us make more informed decisions, but they're not like the catalyst a lot of the time for like, okay, let's pull up the chart, let's see what's big. Okay, this Octane's high, let's put that down. Newcastle's low. Like it's really not that simple. It's a little more sophisticated than that. So I don't think they ever are the primary reason we're making changes. Ultimately we just are trying to find compelling gameplay or different gameplay, and then we can sort of validate how those changes are landing by looking at the physical data and look. I mean, we're a massive game. We'd be doing ourselves a disservice if we aren't at least looking at that to kind of help validate our gut feelings.
Okay, the next question's a tough one. They say, with all due respect, it does feel like there is a disconnect between the players and the devs of Apex and the direction of the game. Do you think that that's true and there's a reason why? And obviously, I know you play the game so much, right? You've been playing for such a long time. So what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I mean, that's I take that question to heart. As someone who was a day zero player before I was a dev, I think pretty sure I have 10,000 hours on Apex between PlayStation and console days, and I made sure I got to Masters before I came out here for Champs, just to make sure I'm up to date with the latest, because it changes every day. But it's a fair question, and I think even within the dev team, like, you'll have different philosophies or different personal experiences. Like, we're a global game, and when you are looking mostly at a competitive subreddit or pros on Twitter, like, you're going to see a small sample of a huge demographic of people that boot up Apex and find enjoyment out of it. But so it's something to be cognizant of and careful with, but also recognize, like, Apex's strength is, like, we're a sweaty game. It's a competitive game, and we have to stay true to that. And so, yeah, I guess it has helped me since joining the team of, like, I can see behind the curtain, right? And I can see kind of larger roadmaps of where we're looking to go. And I do take solace in the fact that we're a live game. And even if I don't personally am fully on board with the design decision we made, I know that we can adapt and we'll change. And we should. We should change. Like, we have to change in order to stay fresh.
Next question is a double-barreled one, so we'll take them one at a time. What do you think makes Apex stand out from other BR games out there?
I think we are a unique blend of, I mean, in a battle royale, like, RNG is a necessary element for games to feel varied and for stories to be told over the course of a match or different matches. But I think we do a good job of letting the players discover how to get better. I think it can be harder for a new player, but I think, like, just the depth of learning that can happen through Apex and the ways you can mitigate a lot of that RNG through managing loadouts, or things like the Evo changes where we're like, if you want better armor, like, here are some vectors to go out and, like, earn it, like, go out and find it. So it's this balance of understanding RNG, but, like, allowing the player to, like, discover those things and, like, get reps with, like, building their game sense and their skill set. So I think we just excel as a more competitive battle royale because of the depth we have there.
That brings us perfectly onto the second part of this question, is they say, since normal Apex and comp are whole different ball games, are there plans on making a game mode or a system that is similar to the competitive side of Apex, and what would be the challenges when you would make a mode like that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's tricky because it's something that we're evaluating all the time. We have mixtape, pubs, takeovers, ranked, comp, and even in ranked, you could say, okay, well, I guess ranked should naturally be the segue from competitive or from sweaty Apex into comp, but, like, the skill difference between a 3-stack pro team and even 3 Masters players is, like, there's a huge gap even there. So and when you have to populate like 60 player lobbies, that is a challenge in itself. So it's something to continue to evaluate. Like, I guess on the Legends team, I can't weigh in, like, too much on kind of what the roadmap for that looks like, but I think we've done a good job. I mean, we see the engagement with ALGS year over year, and the turnout we have, like, this being, I think we have 30-something thousand Apex fans showing up to this event, like the largest esports event in EA's creator history. And, like, we recognize the opportunity and the value and the thirst for the competitive scene there. So, yeah, something we think about and talk about often.
Next is another tough one. Why do they force metas so hard? ?
Good question. I mean, players are stubborn, man. Like, it takes a lot to get people off a character. Internally, even the support stuff, this is a pretty contentious, like, internal thing in terms of, like, having to feel like I have to pick a certain legend. And something like the small bend thing, I mean, like that's a huge change. Right? Now I'm ripping a cell and I'm immediately getting 50 shield back. Like, what will that do for the flow of combat? And I've actually been like pleasantly surprised with a lot of the reception I've seen, or discussions I've had with pros, or just talks I've seen online, of people adjusting, even myself, of like, okay, like this is different, you know, like the game feels fresh. I think we want to be more agile with adjustments. Like earlier this season, you know, we jumped on like the goal knockdowns degeneracy we saw with Newcastle, and we want to be better about like adapting quickly to those things. But I think there is value in taking bigger swings and adjusting. You know, we never want something to be like too overbearing, and that's what we can address with the hotfix. But like, I think taking big swings is a promising thing.
Okay, next is a much nicer one. What is the most proud thing that you as a dev have ever created in Apex Legends? Or I guess, what are you most proud of the things that you've done?
Yeah, Legend upgrades was a big thing for me lately, and back in season 20, and that was a fun task just because I feel like I really got to flex some of my knowledge or experience just as a player for the 20-something characters we had, like building out those different upgrade trees, and just like adding that extra layer of depth and player expression was just a really rewarding, challenging and rewarding process. And it was cool to see the team rally together to get that across the finish line. So I would say that's my proudest moment as a dev, was upgrades.
Okay, finally then, someone says, this might be a little bit too specific. Nothing's ever too specific. But they'd love to know if the timing of major competitive tournaments, like obviously like this tournament, for example, plays any role in the timing of balancing decisions that come to the game. Yeah,
it does. You know, we have some stuff on the docket, and it's like, is this something that we should hotfix, or is it something that should wait till season 24? And a lot of it is like, okay, well, pros have been screaming on it with a certain rule set and certain expectations, and we need to be cognizant of that. We need to be respectful of that. And, you know, we're not going to put the game on hold wholesale, but like it is something, you know, we have the calendar up there. We're looking at the roadmap, and we're lining that up with different sort of design decisions, or when we're trying to weigh in timing of different releases of things. It is a variable that we consider, absolutely.
And then finally, one from me, not from Reddit. Who do you think is going to win?
I mean, seeing Fnatic win like game one of groups and just hearing that cheer on like day one, I'm like, that would be sick if we had like a local team. Like I've always been like pulling for Fnatic, or like to see some Apex success there, especially on home turf, would be cool. I would like to see TSM do well. Is kind of my bias, North America pick. I always like seeing Complexity do well. So those are, I guess, 3 names I'm looking at and hoping for.
John, thank you so much for your time today, and thanks everybody on the Comp Apex subreddit for sending in your questions.
Yeah, thanks guys.